Welcome to Today Matters, our short devotional on the Word of God. You know, one of my favorite writers of the New Testament is the Apostle Paul. His life transformation is recorded in the book of Acts from Saul of Tarsus to Paul the Apostle is truly amazing. You know, recently I was reading Paul's writings to the church in Corinth in 1st and 2nd Corinthians. In 2nd Corinthians, the church was being troubled by some false prophets or false teachers who were trying to undermine Paul's authority. And so Paul is defending his apostleship, his work, and the ministry that he was doing for the Lord. You know, he addresses the arrogance of the false teachers in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 by letting them know all that he experienced from being beaten up, floggings to shipwrecks, imprisonment, persecution, and rejection. And Paul says that he would rather boast about the things that show how weak he is. You see, Paul is setting an example for how we are to live our lives and who should get credit for the work that is being accomplished. Paul says this in 2 Corinthians 12:5, I am going to boast only about how weak I am and how great God is, to use such weakness for his glory. As Christ followers, whatever we do, it should always be to glorify God. But a tendency is for pride to get in the way. Too often we want to tell people how great and how strong we are, and we forget to even mention God. And you know, and Paul addresses that issue in the next verse, in verse 6, when he says this, to keep me from exalting myself, there was given me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from exalting myself. The thorn in the flesh. You know, we're never told what the thorn in the flesh was. Many believe, as I do, that he experienced some kind of physical problem, something that limited him and kept him humble and relying on God. Then continuing on, Paul writes this in verses 8 and 9. 3 different times I begged God to make me well again. Each time he said, no, but I am with you. That is all you need. My power shows up best in weak people. You know, just like Jesus prayed 3 times, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Paul prays 3 times as well. He was crying out to God in prayer. And I don't know, but maybe perhaps he bargained with God a lot like sometimes we do. You know, Lord, I'm sure your ministry could be better served if you heal this. You know, your name will be glorified. Or I can serve you better, more, and efficiently if. You know, do you ever find yourself bargaining with God when you're suffering pain or going through difficult times? You know, each time Paul prays, he gets the same answer. No, but I am with you, and that is all you need. My power shows up best in weak people, is what Jesus says. Paul finally accepts the fact that he will never be healed from his ailment. He comes to the place where he has accepted it. Paul continues on in verse 10. He says this, since I know it is all for Christ's good, I'm quite happy about the thorn and about insults and hardships, persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. The less I have, the more I depend on him. You know, I come to God in my weakness and say, Lord, I give you my need for wisdom in the situation, and he gives us his wisdom in exchange for my lack of understanding. Lord, I hand over to you my sin and guilt, and he gives me his forgiveness. Wow. Lord, I give you my failures, and he causes me to grow through this experience. Lord, I hand over my helplessness, and he gives me hope. My stress, he gives me his peace. My loneliness, and he gives me his presence. When I am the weakest in my own power, I am strongest living in his presence. You know, the Apostle Paul boasted in his weaknesses. He used his thorn to give God glory and for personal growth. What do you do or will you do for your circumstances and the weaknesses in your life? I want to encourage you. Let God speak to you through them and give you his strength, and then boast in him, for today matters.